Derek with Gold and Black Radio, and I just came from my local Academy Sports and Outdoors store. The most festive gear of the year is back, guys, at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Don't miss the limited edition Magellan Outdoor Christmas Market Collection only at Academy. Get exclusive 2025 gear and gifts for all your holiday parties, fun family photos, and Christmas morning traditions. Check out the entire collection, from matching PJs and holiday print fishing shirts and dresses to exclusive new Mossy Oak Snowdrift camo styles and more. Shop in-store or at academy.com. Need it fast? Get same-day delivery powered by DoorDash. Let your holiday fun begin with Magellan Outdoors Christmas Market Collection only at Academy. Welcome in to another edition of Gold and Black Radio. I'm your host, Derek Schultz, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Purdue made it a four-quarter game in the chilly outdoors of the Big House in Ann Arbor, but couldn't quite push the Wolverines to the limit as Michigan escaped with a 21-16 win for their seventh straight victory in the series. The other half of college football's most heated rivalry now awaits as Purdue sets its sights on number one and defending champion Ohio State. Hard to believe, first time since 1989 that Ross-Ade will have the number one team come calling. We'll talk Boilers and Buckeyes with Tom Dienhart and Jellison in just a few moments. But first, a big thank you to our tremendous and loyal Gold and Black sponsors that make this show possible, including our friends at Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics, and the official credit card for Purdue fans, Boiler Up. East End Grill and Ripple and Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. The Whitaker Inn, this Midwestern oasis, is perfect for a relaxing staycation or a weekend getaway. Escape from the ordinary at the Whitaker Inn. By Sand Valley Resort, ready for a winter getaway? Discover the stillness and beauty of Sand Valley. Our stunning 12,000-acre landscape is the perfect place to explore, whether you're cross-country skiing, enjoying a quiet walk, or just relaxing by the fire. With thoughtfully designed accommodations and nourishing dining, Sand Valley is the place to reconnect with yourself and those you love. Find your winter retreat at sandvalley.com. And the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research. The Purdue Institute for Cancer Research has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Purdue brings together world-class Boilermaker scientists from across the university, conducting cutting-edge research that uncovers new ways to prevent, diagnose, and treat cancer. With your support, cancer research saves lives. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. Let's welcome on our dynamic duo, Tom Dienhart, Jellison, football writers for goldandblack.com, who join us now on GBR. And Tom, look, I think Saturday was the kind of effort that folks can really get behind. And considering they didn't make a lot of the mistakes that they made against Notre Dame or especially USC, I thought Purdue accounted for themselves pretty well in a game where they not only held a home field disadvantage, obviously, but also a talent 1-2 against Michigan.
Yeah, you're right. A good effort, good game plan, right? Just, not enough explosiveness on offense, Derek. That's a big issue there. Inability to get big plays, inability to get big chunk plays. It's glaring against a defense like Michigan's especially. But, yeah, I think you have to be pleased with the effort, right? And to hang in there 4 quarters, to be in there right to the very end with it, against a Michigan team that was just begging to get beat, right? Just begging to get beat. And again, Purdue had his chances. They're going to got to stop on that last Michigan drive, got the ball back to its office, maybe a chance to really throw a scare into the Wolverines. But all in all, like you said, after a while, you sort of want to taste victory, right? And just put this in the same column, put it on the same pile as Minnesota and Rutgers. Woulda, shoulda, coulda, almost there. But again, like you said, Derek, you can at least hang your hat on a good effort. And there certainly is no quit in this program, despite the record this year.
Dub, I feel like you're always our running game guy, and Purdue's running game really did a nice job despite the absence of Devin Mockabee, and we'll get into that because Maccabee's career, unfortunately, coming to an end here as a Boilermaker. But a combined 26 carries, 122 yards from Malachi Thomas and Antonio Harris. How impressed were you with them, especially considering that Michigan's defensive front is no joke?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was very surprising. I didn't know how much push that offensive line was going to get. I think, the offensive line has been playing better as the year's kind of gone on. Especially in the run game. You've seen the run game kind of come alive over the last 4 or 5 games. Maybe not as consistently as Barry Odom or offensive coordinator Josh Henson would like, but it still steps in the right direction, right? So, I think Purdue's going to severely miss Devin Mockabee. But what we saw on Saturday, I think that could lessen the blow if Purdue can get that type of production out of Malachi Thomas and Antonio Harris. And those are 2 guys that even before Mockabee went down in that Rutgers game, they played very well too. So, that's something that maybe Purdue can hang its hat on. But Devin Mockabee is just, and I'm sure we'll talk about it here in a minute, but you just hate to see a guy like that go down and have his college career cut short like that.
Yeah, no question, Lee. No question about that. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I think part of it is because Bryce Underwood is still learning how to be a quarterback. I'm trying to be nice here because I find him very underwhelming as a passer, to be totally honest. I get that he's just a freshman, but Tom, the Boilers are able to keep that passing game in check. The problem is it really didn't matter because Underwood was able to dance out of pressure when they brought blitzes. And Michigan's running backs, led by Jordan Marshall, really got whatever they wanted on the ground, including in the big chunks that you mentioned Purdue really lacked on their end.
Yeah, you're right. And he's not even the number one running back. Top guy, Justice Haynes was out with injury. So 3 touchdowns rushing from Marshall, well over 100 yards, over 200 yards from Michigan. Like you said, Derek, Bryce Underwood did his damage with his feet as well. Really didn't need to throw the ball that much. And, Purdue couldn't stop the run, so it really didn't matter. You or I could have quarterbacked that offense with a running game like they were able to pull off. It was dispiriting for Purdue to not see him be able to get off the field. So, yeah, it was a little, I guess not a big setback for the defense, but it's a defense that has its challenges, I think, along the front in particular. So, we'll have to see where they go from here, guys. You look at the stats for Ohio State, awfully daunting. The number one scoring defense in America. I think they've only given up 55 points in 8 games. They're getting up about 7 points a game is the average. So just a real juggernaut there. And then, of course, offensively, where do you start with those 2 receivers? Jeremiah Smith is a heck of a talent, Justin Saying. So just a big bite for Purdue to try to consume this weekend with the Buckeyes coming to town. But it's going to be a lot of fun anytime you get the number one team coming, guys. Like you said, Derek, 1989 was an awful long time ago.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that predates Dub by several years. We're not going to tell you just how many years that it does, but it predates him by several. And Dub, circling back on Maccabee, with Barry Odom confirming the news on Monday. I know these last 2 seasons certainly weren't fun, and we saw him soldier through those, which I think the fan base appreciated. But me personally, I'll always link Maccabee with that 2022 Big Ten title game run season. Yeah. He really kind of burst onto the scene. Here's a kid from Nowheresville, Indiana. No offense to, what is it, Boontown or
Boonville.
Boonville. Yeah, sorry. I should really know that. I don't want to get any angry complaints for any of our Boilermakers from Boonville down there. But he's a walk-on, right? We love the stories of walk-on to Big Ten starter to nearly 1,000-yard rusher that first year in 2022. I would hope most Boiler fans will remember him fondly, though.
I think they will. And you've kind of already seen or started to see the outpour of support for him on social media from fans. And I remember Barry Odom talked at Big Ten Media Days about just what Devin Maccabee means to Purdue and the type of person he is. And I think that there's no better representative of what Purdue is than Devin Maccabee on this football team. Just the way he plays, the way he carries himself. He's gritty. He's a hard worker. And he overcame challenges and obstacles to really leave his mark at Purdue. And he's going to go down as one of the most productive running backs in program history. So, you'd like to see him maybe get a shot at the NFL. But if not, he has his engineering degree that he's going to be able to fall back on. And, that's something that he's very proud of, or he's going to be very proud of. I think he graduates at the end of the semester. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever said a bad word about Devin Maccabee just as a person. And I think that speaks volumes to just who he is and kind of what he's meant to this program over the last 4 years.
Tom, I don't know how you feel about Washington, but did we just miss Purdue's last best chance at maybe breaking through for a win, considering that I'll be honest, I don't see it with Michigan at all. I understand that they're ranked. I understand that they're 6-2. I think that is an extremely ordinary football team to me. That looks like a 8-4, 7-5 type. And just look, they're going to go on and beat Ohio State for like the 5th straight year, right? After I say all this, but did they just miss their last best opportunity, or do you think maybe Seattle, the Boilers, could really surprise us?
Well, see, real quick on Devin. He had ankle surgery on Friday for a high ankle sprain, and he really didn't want to rush his return back. He did it so he wants to just heal up and be ready for pro day and maybe the combine if he gets invited to that, or even the senior bowl type games. And I think he should be good to go in about 8 weeks, but some guys can come back as quick as 2 and 4. So again, just to sort of echo real quick before I move on, what Dub said, an all-time great, top 4 all-time rusher at Purdue, 13 yards short of 3,000. It would have been neat to have seen him reach that 3,000 plateau, but I don't think it bothers Devin Mockabee at all. It never was about the numbers for Devin. So just an all-time great player, all-time great person. And yeah, Derek, I think you're right. Purdue probably did just bid adieu to its last best chance at victory, I think. Like you said, a pretty ordinary Michigan team. If that game's in Ross-Ade Stadium, you kind of wonder what the outcome would have been. And it's not going to be easy in Seattle, man. That's a team that crawled on the polls this week at 24, I believe. They're going to be plenty motivated. They still have a lot to play for out there at UW. And then you come home, man. Then you come home to play the buzzsaw of all buzzsaws, the number 1 offense in America, the Indiana Hoosiers. Just hung 55 on Michael Loxley's guys in College Park. So, yeah, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but they let another one slip through their fingers, and I think that's what's frustrating for fans. Just you get close, and you never grab that brass ring, and it gets really frustrating. And we talked about hanging your hat on effort and want to and not quitting, but man, after a while, you want that W, and it's eluded Purdue, and I don't see it coming. I see a 2-10 finish here in a very long off season, an off season that's going to be filled with a lot of change on the roster, and I think we even see the staff get tweaked as well.
Last thing here, Dub, and we saw that, as much as Purdue kept themselves in this game, kind of piggybacking on Tom's point and potentially 2-10 here, close but no cigar has been sort of the theme of this season. That first quarter fumble in the red zone, and then they have 2 plays to essentially get a yard, the non-conversion in the fourth quarter at midfield. And those 2 plays just sort of were the microcosm a little bit of the season to me. It just feels like this entire 2025 campaign, when Purdue has faced either a potential game-changing or game-on-the-line type play or sequence of plays, they just haven't ever seemed to come through.
Yeah, and I think it's been a matter of just execution, and for whatever reason, whenever there's an opportunity, Purdue just hasn't been able to seize it. I can't think of one time where they really did. Excluding maybe the first couple weeks of the year, when you're playing a couple cupcakes. When the games really mattered and the opponents were significant threats to you, you just haven't performed in the biggest moments. And I think that's what makes great teams is they do make those big plays. Michigan had that last drive to kind of seal the game. They made big plays, and Purdue just hasn't been able to do that. And I don't know that I really have a good explanation for it. Whether it's talent or scheme, I don't really know. I just know that they just the plays have been there for the taking, and they just haven't made them.
We'll be back on Friday for another edition of Gold and Black Radio. Get you set for Saturday's matchup with number 1 Ohio State. But in the meantime, the best Purdue football coverage can be found right here at goldenblack.com and on social media. So follow along Tom and Dub for all the latest when it comes to the Boilers. Guys, we appreciate it as always, and we will talk to you again coming up here on Friday.
Take care, fellas.
Hey, college football fans, it's time to lock in on those Saturday showdowns with BetMGM. Whether you're betting the underdog or riding with the favorite, take your excitement to the next level with a college football odds boost token. Log into your BetMGM account to receive your token. Then place a bet on any college football matchup with your activated token. If your boosted bet hits, you'll score a bigger payout. Claim your odds boost token and be sure to activate it before placing your bet. The game is about to kick off, so feel the rush and own the moment. BetMGM, make it legendary. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 and over only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. First bet offer for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Welcome back to Gold and Black Radio. From football now over to basketball. I changed the background and everything, so we're heading over to Mackey Arena where Purdue is going to play a basketball game that counts coming up tonight against Evansville in their regular season opener. And joining us now to talk Boilermaker basketball is basketball knower and goldenblack.com columnist and our friend Brian Neubert. Brian, look, we know Purdue had to play through some obvious limitations last year. I don't think it took many people more than a few seconds to realize what those limitations were. And a lot of them around not only not having rim protection, but also just not having, a true center for the first time in a very long time. I mean, when you go back and look at this team's sort of front court history, certainly in the last 7 or 8 years, I'm not just talking about Zach Edey. They always seem to have that presence. And I know no team can truly mimic what Purdue did and had with a guy like Edey, but because of the front court personnel, when you get back a healthy Jacobson and you add Oscar Clough as well, and then of course Trey Kaufman-Renn doesn't have to do it on his own, and he can get back to not playing the 5, perhaps. Will the 25-26 Boilermakers look like and play like the team of more recent vintage than, say, the 24-25 version? Was that a little bit more of an aberration given the circumstances that they had to deal with last year?
Well, they'll look like it in the airport, that's for sure. You got a 7'4" guy, and you got a 260-pound, 6'11" center now. Whereas last year, you had a couple of forwards who were your biggest guys. Even before Daniel Jacobson got hurt last year, it was pretty evident that Purdue was going to go from being a team where the center was the star to being a team where the center was a role player. Center was going to be a role last year. Just go in there, rebound, defend, make most of your dunks, and do what you're supposed to do on defense, things like that. And I still think that's the case, but I think the guys Purdue has now are far more equipped to do that than they would have been last year when it was Wilberg and a true freshman in Daniel Jacobson. But the star power around them also dictates even more that, center be a role. You rebound, you fix all of Purdue's problems from last year by rebounding. Not all of them, but a lot of them, enough to make a meaningful difference between one year and the next. Rebounding helps the offense. Rim protection makes the defense that much better. Defensive rebounding makes the defense that much better. Better defense makes for better offense. And I just think you've got an almost ideal complementary cast, complementary with an E, not with an I, and almost an ideal complementary cast now around Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Renn, and Fletcher Lawyer. And you have unburdened Trey Kaufman-Renn to a really, really significant extent. Him, having to wrestle with Vladislav Golden and the kid from Penn State, Niederhauser. I can never get his names correct, in the correct order, I should say. And Umar Ballo, guys like that who are way bigger than him. That's got to take a toll. I mean, it has to be a situation where you're wrestling with those guys in the octagon for 35 minutes or 30 minutes, 32 minutes, whatever it might be. At the end of the game, you can't possibly be your best self, and you can't have the energy, you can't have the quickness, and he couldn't foul. And sometimes that stuff is relatively out of your control when you're trying to just survive against guys who are 3 inches and 60 pounds heavy, 3 inches taller and 60 pounds heavier than you. So I think this frees up Trey Kaufman-Renn too to be an even better player now. The spacing thing is going to be a little bit clunky at times, but I think the spacing can work to Purdue's advantage just as much as it can work to its disadvantage. I've said this over and over. I think playing next to true size, not just true size, but functional, good, real size, I think makes Trey Kaufman-Renn a much better player. You'll see his assists go up. You'll see his rebounds go up. His putbacks will be tripled this season, probably. That might be overstatement, but I don't care. And I just think that Purdue fixed a lot of its problems from last year, simply with Oscar Clough and then Daniel Jacobson coming back from injury.
Yeah, you mentioned Golden and Ballo. I think the worst thing about what happened with Trey Kaufman-Renn last year, or I guess the most frustrating thing would be, 28 feet from the basket, there's a little rub foul on a moving screen.
Yeah.
And you get that little whistle, and it just felt devastating because you knew, suddenly TKR's got 2 fouls, and you look at the clock and there's 12:48 left in the first half, and you think, what the hell are they going to do now?
It decided games. It decided games. And it shouldn't be that way. Now, Purdue obviously could have gotten a better supporting cast around Trey Kaufman-Renn, Will Berg simply was a miss. I mean, everybody loves the kid, but he just wasn't good enough. Daniel Jacobson getting hurt, that's no one's fault. It's the fragility of the human bone that assumes the blame for that one. But it just Purdue got caught in a situation where Caleb First hadn't quite become the player that you figured he'd be as a senior. Camden Heide was playing the 4. He was inconsistent in some ways where Purdue needed him to be consistent. He opened up a door to get replaced by First, and I just don't want this to sound like I'm just trashing everybody who left, but there were limitations in all of those guys that added up to a real problem for Purdue. The rim finishing, too. I didn't mention that before. You could not finish at the basket last year with anybody other than Trey Kaufman-Wren. When you look at Purdue's shot chart, I looked this up on Synergy a couple weeks ago. Here's the rim. Here's Trey Kaufman-Wren's side. Here's the other side. And Trey Kaufman-Wren's side is all red to indicate good. The other side is all blue to indicate cold, bad. So Purdue just being able to make a few more dunks, a few more layups a game, things like that are just going to make Purdue so much better too from an offensive perspective. And they're already pretty good. I mean, bear in mind, with the limitations Purdue had offensively last year, they were still one of the top offensive teams in the country in terms of efficiency. I think they were 4th in the Big Ten in scoring. That's 4 out of 18 now too. So, but no, offense wasn't Purdue's problem last year. But they did leave a lot of productivity out on the floor. And I think that a lot of that gets filled in this year. You get one more putback a game this year. You make one more high percentage layup or dunk around the basket than you did last year per game. You make one more fast break opportunity off defense, a rebound, a block shot, whatever it might be. That's 6 points right there. And it's there's just a lot of gaps from last season. That size is really, really going to help you fill in.
One thing that will remain the same from last year and really every other year in recent memory is this non-conference schedule is once again very tough. And Matt Painter's always treated scheduling differently in the fact that he seems to welcome the opportunity to learn from losses and or tough experiences away from home as opposed to dunking on a bunch of overmatched opponents at Mackey. Will fans, though, Brian, have a little bit of a harder time with Purdue entering the season with that little number 1 next to their name? Fans always have a tough time stomaching losses, right? But this is uncharted territory, right? They haven't been a preseason number 1 or had that attached to them this early in the season.
Well, they've been number 1 quite a bit in Decembers and Januaries lately, but it's normally that first Big Ten road game that gets them. I don't know if they were number 1. I think they were number 1 when they went to Rutgers game that year. Yeah, yep. I can't remember the other circumstances. The Northwestern game, that was really, really regrettable. The Penn State game, which was just a buzzsaw. They should be used to this burden by now. Now, I can't speak to fans. I don't think fans ever get used to losing. I think they're kind of a different species. All due respect to our beloved readers, consumers, etc. But I think that if Purdue's not insulated by now to the realities of the heaviness of their crown, then they, probably haven't been paying attention, and it's probably a real sign of trouble to come if Purdue, is in a situation here where they go to Alabama, and it's a situation where they're not ready for what the very same thing Alabama was walking into last year when they came to Mackey Arena. I think this season's going to be an ultimate approach of Purdue's consistency, professionalism, angst. I think Purdue has to be, competitively angry this season, and for a team that has been told how good it's been forever, with some guys who are living very comfortable lives right now outside of basketball in a lot of different, very new ways in the college basketball world, who've won a lot of awards and gotten a lot of preseason praise. I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic. I don't see any red flags whatsoever, but it is kind of an interesting undercurrent to the season because Purdue is back in that situation now where everywhere you go, if you get beat, the floor is getting stormed. And you got to do everything in your power to, if you get somebody else's best effort, you need to match it, if not exceed it. And that's going to be kind of the ultimate test of this team's maturity, professionalism, and so on and so forth. But if they don't have it now at this stage of their collective careers, how the hell could you explain that? Because these guys have been through everything.
Yeah, I mean, just to show how different it's been, I know that both of our friends at Indy Card Exchange, they just had Braden Smith in for an autograph signing. I think it was the other night. And I don't know what he pocketed from that, but I think the tickets were $50 GA and $75 for VIP. So you'd imagine, new territory for Purdue basketball. Glenn Robinson wasn't doing that, right? I mean, those weren't the rules back then, where you could do things like that in the off season or even bumping up right against the season. Sticking kind of with the non-league here, Brian, I remember looking at the schedule last year and thinking the Marquette game was the game that intrigued me the most. It actually was the game that ended up causing me, it made me the most nauseous, I guess, because that was run out of the gym type performance there. But is there a game right now? And this is a tough question to answer, probably because I'm asking you about Alabama and Auburn and all these teams that have had some changes, and we don't know exactly what they're going to look like. But just on paper, with what you know about these squads, either an opponent or a venue or stylistically, or maybe even all three of those things that you're thinking, this will be great for Purdue to see where they are and see what they can put on the floor.
Yeah, hear me out. It's not Texas Tech. It's not Marquette. It's not Iowa State. It's not Alabama. It's not Auburn. It is Rutgers. Rutgers should stink this year. They have no players. But Purdue goes on the road for that December Big Ten opener every year and loses. And, how you can – it's not every year, but it's a pretty decisive superlative. It's like 5 out of 7 or something like that. And in that time, Purdue has been the better team every single time. I don't know if it's a jump from non-conference play to Big Ten play. I don't know if it's that first Big Ten road game, whatever it might be, being a shock to the system or something, but they lose that game every year. And it would defy a lot of laws of science if this Purdue team goes into Rutgers and loses to that Rutgers team this year. So I think that's the game that really is going to be a pretty big tell about Purdue, because you're trying to win a Big Ten championship here. You should win a Big Ten championship here, and you can't afford to keep giving one away on the front end against teams you should beat. And Purdue ought to go in there like Darth Vader and just play its ass off, for every second of all 40 minutes of that game, and understand that it's not going to happen again. It's really hard to explain why that's been, but it's really a trend that Purdue should be professional enough, because it sure as hell is good enough, to put to an end this year.
Yeah, since they started doing that, and I don't know what year they started doing the little December road game dealio, but I think the only one that they didn't lose was Nebraska. Overtime. And even that game was an overtime game, right?
Yep.
So even that was a close scrape. Yeah, against the Nebraska team, that was, okay, but they weren't, Purdue entered again as the better team definitively. But yeah, like Rutgers, Northwestern, I think multiple times against Rutgers, and then the buzzsaw that was Penn State last year. It's been a trend for sure.
They lost to Nebraska the 1 year too, right before they went to Ohio. I think they got Tominaga'd in that game, like we all do every now and then. I think that I don't know what it is, but you never get a marquee game in December because the networks don't want the marquee games when football's going on. So Purdue always opens with a Minnesota or a Rutgers or a Penn State or a Nebraska. So I don't know if there's been a complacency issue with that game, where Purdue hasn't taken the opponent as seriously as it should have. That would be very unlike what Purdue has historically been, but there's got to be a common denominator to all of this. Purdue plays a hell of a non-conference schedule. The Big Ten opener, they should be pretty ready for that level of competition, whether it's the difference between playing Auburn somewhere and then going to play Rutgers and not taking them seriously, I have no idea. But Purdue's got to buck that trend this year. So that's the game to me that is going to tell you a lot about what this Purdue team's all about.
Brian will have your post-game wrap after each and every Purdue basketball game, including tonight's season opener against Evansville. You can see and hear Brian on Golden Black's post-game football coverage as well for the rest of November, as crossover season is by far his busiest, and all of his writings and musings and everything else, Knucklehead Central, Boiling Over, all of that, goldenblack.com for our subscribers on the website. Thanks, Brian. We'll talk to you again soon.
No problem, Derek. Thanks, man.
That's Brian Neubert, goldenblack.com, and that is our show for Golden Black Radio. Thanks so much for joining us, and thank you to our presenting sponsor, Academy Sports and Outdoors, as well as Purdue Federal Credit Union, the official credit card for Purdue fans. East End Grill and Ripple and Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street in Lafayette. The Whitaker Inn for unparalleled comfort and cuisine. Visit the Whitaker Inn. Sand Valley Resort with thoughtfully designed accommodations and nourishing dining. Sand Valley is a place to reconnect with yourself and those you love. Find your winter retreat at sandvalley.com. And finally, the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research, which has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And of course, you can leave a positive review. We'd really appreciate that. 5-star review would be awesome. A comment, hey, that'd be great as well. Hey, Derek, I really liked your all black long sleeve shirt and your coverage, and you look like Mike Myers from Sprockets. And don't forget to enable alerts as we upload new content just about every day, goldenblack.com. And if you're not already a subscriber, what the heck are you doing? Not to be accusatory, but come on, goldenblack.com. Join the biggest Purdue community on the internet. All the cool kids are hanging out at Knucklehead Central right now, talking Boiler men's hoops and football. A pot sweetener in case you are not a goldenblack.com subscriber. Use promo code PU1 at checkout. PU1 at checkout. And you get 2 months of your monthly subscription for just $1. First 2 months, $1 for November and December for men's basketball and football coverage at goldenblack.com. You not only get Brian Neubert, you get Carm, you get Tom Dienhart, you get Dub Jellison in the recruiting angle, you get Alan Karpick, you get Knucklehead Central, you get Boiling Over, you get everything. goldenblack.com. Subscribe with the best community of Purdue fans on the planet. Golden Black Radio will return in our usual Friday slot. We'll get you ready for the Boilers and the #1 Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll also have Brian on to recap the week that was in basketball, including tonight's game against the Aces, and we'll keep sprinkling in the basketball, as I know, football season is kind of dissolving away if it hasn't already, to be honest. And basketball season is coming on, so we're going to try to cover all of our bases. I know we're talking football and basketball now. I'm making a baseball analogy, but you guys get what I'm saying. We're going to cover everything right here on Golden Black Radio. But next edition Friday, and we will talk to you then. And until then, I hope you enjoyed this one. My name is Derek Schultz, and we'll see you next time right here on GBR.